listening to Flush Your Fat for Good with Jackie and Dr. Vicky, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hi guys, this is Jackie Paget Baird.
And I'm Dr. Vicky Arcady. I almost forgot.
I was thinking this
Hey, that's the topic of our podcast. Am I getting...
brain fog,
yeah,
right?
Okay. No, I'm not.
Thanks for joining us. We got we have a fun show. Well, it's kind of gross too.
It's informative.
We're going to talk about yeast, which everybody has, and if your immune system goes below 50%, it wreaks havoc with everything in your body. And we're excited because we're going to talk to Rob Cohn tonight, who's one of our buddies, on Flush Your Fat for Good. But first, let me tell you that Flush Your Fat for Good is not a diet. This is a lifestyle for a lifetime. That doesn't mean you do this for like 30, 60, 90 days. It's literally something so different than you've ever seen or heard before, because it's a way of life. It's like if you learn the rules of the road, you don't really tend to want to change them, because that's the rules of the road. It's like you learn how to drive a car, and do you say to yourself, you know what, just this Saturday I'm going to not stop at the red lights. That's going to be dangerous or harmful to you and others. Well, a lifestyle is where you are taking care of yourself, just like you're taking care of your car. You would know better not to let your car run out of gas, or wherever you are and you're taking a long trip, you're not going to check all the fluids and make sure the tires are safe, that your car is capable of going on that trip. Well, with your body, you really need to look at your body as you're taking a long ride, and you want it to be you want it to last the whole length of the journey. Okay, so with Flush Your Fat for Good is to be lean and healthy for life. And we wrote the book. It's in Amazon.com and also on our website, flushyourfatforgood.com. And we've noticed with 60 years combined information that we've learned, Dr. Vicky as a doctor and I as her assistant, as well as I was raised with a lot of biochemistry and physiology information, people that they don't have to be overweight to have a yeast issue. But all the overweight people we have seen have a yeast issue.
A little bit of yeast overgrowth.
And they don't know it. And many times, and Dr. Vicky on our Did You Know That segment is going to share that information with you. But I want to just show you some of the things you might not know about yeast. And the first slide would be, did you know yeast plays a role with anxiety and depression? Now, who would even think that? But healthy body, healthy mind, or anytime you have a brain function disorder, you got to look at the gut. If you have yeast in your gut, you're going to have a problem. Also, they've discovered that yeast plays a role with Alzheimer's. So when you have, you have a brain function issue, you got to look at the gut, and the gut is very, very connected to what's going on in the brain. We see that with the spectrum of autism kids.
It's all about the gut.
Also, in the sweat areas, when you have under your arms, on the backs of your legs, wherever you're sweating, the folds of your skin, right? Elbows. So many people have yeast on their elbows. You see these commercials, there's, what is it, that singer? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, she's talking about it. This guy says, "How sexy are these elbows?" Because he took.
They call it eczema, but it could also
be the drug that they took to get rid of it. But while you're looking at all the fun pictures on the TV commercial, the side effects are like almost fatal.
Yeah.
So under your arms, these are the sweat areas, and
moist.
It's perfect breeding ground for if your yeast is out of control. And again, it's all about your immune system and the quality of health. And then, of course, on your face. I mean, to have just acne alone is horrible when you're young.
I think that picture is the beard. When you scratch the beard and shave it, you could get a yeast infection on your skin there.
When you women wax their mustache,
exactly,
or whatever, you have a makeup that you didn't clean the sponge on, but your immune system is low, and now you've created a breeding ground for yeast.
Yes.
So those are just some of the pictures we wanted to inform you about what we're going to talk about. And before we get into talking to our guest, I want Dr. Vicki to do Did You Know That segment, because she came up with some very interesting facts about yeast, and it always plays a role with fat loss. So keep that in mind.
Well, I think I want to give you a little background history. You know, I've been in practice 35 years. So
pushing it.
Yeah. And you know, in the 80s, when I first was in practice, mid-80s, my mother came down with yeast, systemic yeast.
Serious yeast.
And, you know, today people, they know this term. They know that yeast infection, they know candida, they know these words, they know these terms, they're familiar with them. But in the mid-80s, there was a book called The Yeast Syndrome by Dr. Crook. And he introduced it really to the world to let them know that this is could be a serious, potentially fatal, disease or proliferation in the body or on the body. And when my mother was in Cleveland Hospital, and they couldn't figure out why she had double pneumonia, she was, morbidly obese, and she could barely walk, and she was rushed to the Cleveland Hospital, and her lungs were full, and she kept, spitting up this, it looked like cotton, wet cotton, with a yellow tinge to it. When you have a productive cough like that, any productive cough, you should see a doctor. But in these days, when she went to the hospital, she was pretty much she almost died, and they couldn't figure out what to do with her because I flew from here there as an emergency, and when I arrived there, she was in her bed intubated, and they had about 12 antibiotics going into her, and that's the exact opposite wrong thing, wrong medicines to give her. And so I let them do their thing, and they had her she was on a machine, and it was very sad. She was in and out of consciousness. It was not good. She had brain fog. It can go into the brain. Anyway, long story short, I told them, I said, could you please do a bronchoscope, go down there and take some of the material out of her lungs and test it for yeast, mold, and fungus. Oh my God, it was like I had 3 heads. It's like, you don't believe that, do you? The clinic director there, it was a teaching hospital, which was good because it was very good. We were lucky. And he says, you don't believe that yeast syndrome book? And I says, absolutely, I see it in my practice. I says, please, just do me the favor, test for yeast, mold, and fungus. So I would come, the next day or later, I would come around the corner and they'd run away from me, and what they didn't believe in it. No, you know this. No one believed that it existed.
Right.
They didn't believe in chronic fatigue. They didn't believe in that you could have a systemic yeast infection, candida
fibromyalgia.
None of this.
No, it was all in your mind.
It was all in your mind, and they
Right.
would give them antidepressants, and they couldn't figure it out. And so as I tried to find out what the results of the bronchoscope was, they kept dodging me and running away from me. And finally, I caught up with the clinic director, and I said, so what is it? He goes, it's Aspergillus familiaris, candida, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, it's yeast, mold, and fungus. And I said, okay, great. What are you going to do about it? He says, we're going to do, they treat it like, in her case, like a valley fever, which is a systemic fungal infection. And they gave her amphotericin B intravenously. So, and, but my point is, in those days, they didn't believe it. It was really hard to practice.
In these days. They don't always look
Well,
at it as seriously as they
right,
should.
they don't think of it first.
Right.
But I want to tell you that because we have come a long way, and medicine has come a long way, because those of us that don't use medicine and had to rely on the body and the organisms, we had to figure out what the heck they were doing
Right.
and what they had. If they weren't responding, then why? So I wanted to give you just the basics. You're probably thinking, well, what is this yeast thing and how do you get it? Well, it's termed a yeast infection, and it's an overgrowth of yeast, which it's a type of fungus, and it can be anywhere in the body, and it's called candidiasis. And it's, by far, the most common is Candida albicans, but there's actually 20 species of Candida. And this fungi, it lives on all surfaces of our body.
Mm-hmm.
And under certain conditions, they can be so numerous that they cause infections. And like you said, Jackie, particularly in warm and moist areas, such as the vagina. It lives in the vagina, so I think everyone's familiar with a vaginal yeast infection, that women get it, and especially during periods, menopausal and pregnancy. And thrush, we all know what thrush is.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it sometimes in the babies, and quite frequently, where they get that furry tongue. That's the yeast. And then they get diaper rash. Well, it goes from the tongue to the butt, to the rectum, and you have all through, and it comes out when they urinate, and it comes out through their feces. They get a diaper rash down there, and they can also get it on their skull, cradle cap. It's called.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you just have to keep it clean. It is treatable. You just have to know what to do with it. So my point is, it does happen even in babies right after they're born, not too long after they're born. The breasts, women have issues with the breasts. The elderly have more issues with yeast than younger people. Why? Because their immune systems are not as strong. And I just saw on the news a couple weeks ago, I think, that the yeast infections in these elderly facilities is killing the elderly.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
dying of yeast infections.
Well, and their diets aren't conducive to getting rid of it either.
So, anyway, if you break down the skin in any way, you get a cut, a scrape, like shaving, or you cut yourself, you can stimulate that yeast to grow, and it can cause an infection, and the organism will penetrate, and it can go underneath the skin. Like I said, the abdomen, you saw some of the pictures. The abdomen is a lower abdomen. You can get it in the skin folds. And when I have a woman with, the men get it too, in the genital area, and that's known as jock itch.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fungus.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have a woman who I saw in my practice, because I have a diplomate in pregnancy and pediatrics, so I saw a lot of pregnant women. And when I have them, and fertile women, and I had to help them, but when I see them with a yeast infection, I treat both the mother, the couple, both the man and the woman, because they can give it back to one another.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy for the woman to try to take care of it, but then if she has given it to the man and he's got it going on, then he keeps giving it back to her, and it's just it can be all over his genitals. I mean, it can be everywhere, and jock itch is very typical of what the man sees. Why? Because they exercise or they work outside and they get damp, and there's folds, and that's why you get it. Up to 45% of the people may die when the fungus enters the bloodstream.
Wow.
That's scary.
That's
My
very
mother
scary.
was one of them, and this was in the 80s when I was dealing with doctors that didn't believe it, and people that have and in those days when AIDS was very prevalent,
Right.
it was an epidemic. Yeast and Epstein-Barr virus, or chronic fatigue, those were the organisms that were killing these AIDS patients, taking them down, is because they would get it in their throat. They would get the yeast, which is very common area to get when they're intubated. And in AIDS patients, that's where they can get it, is the yeast infection in the throat.
It goes into the lungs.
Yes, it's called esophagitis.
Right.
And a very bad inflammation. And, you know, it can go into the lungs, liver, spleen. And our subject tonight, it can also go and give you brain fog, what we call brain fog in the brain. And my mother had it so badly that she actually had, we called them freakouts, because she didn't really have a seizure, but she had a freak out, we called it, where she would just suddenly check out, and she was like, you know, like dazed, and she was out of it, not, you know, and she wasn't on any drugs. She wasn't on any kind of drugs at all, except maybe high blood pressure medication or something like that. But she would freak out, and they were very frequent until we got a handle on the systemic yeast infection. You will also see it on the nail beds, like your fingernails, but especially the toes. My mother, when her toenails finally grew all the way out and were clear, the yeast was finally gone. It took a while, but a long while. It took years, but it finally went away. And remember now, if you're on antibiotics and you're on certain medication, you could also destroy your gut lining, and you could also create potential for overgrowth of yeast. See, we have it through our bodies, but our skin and our body's immune system usually handle this so it doesn't get out of hand. And this is why we're so, you know, into our lifestyles, because if you also eat badly and you don't get nutrition, you know, and in my opinion, people like my mother who were morbidly obese, she was malnourished.
Right.
If you're malnourished, your immune system's not good. If your immune system's not good, and you're inflaming your gut with the foods you're eating, sugars, the starches, the yeasts, you know, the yeast.
Yeah, the glutens.
The treatment, and the initial treatment for candida is like phase 1 in our book. It's phase 1. It's a starch-free, sugar-free, dairy-free diet, where you change your diet and you clean it up. You eat fresh, you eat low glycemic, which is one of our pillars, low glycemic fruits and vegetables, which do not spike the insulin. If you have insulin resistance from being overweight, you have a potential to have yeast overgrowth, and we've seen it. If you have diabetes, you have a potential to have yeast overgrowth, systemic. And what happens is, if you have mold on the wall, yeast, mold, and fungus, it all goes together. If you have mold on the wall, what happens to the wall? The paint on the wall.
Right, it eats it up.
It eats it up. Well, guess what? That's what it'll do to your gut. And you start getting, it starts getting porous. You get holes in your gut where the food particles come out, and you're now going to get allergies on top of the yeast infection, because those big chunks of food are not supposed to come out.
Yeah, and you hear about leaky gut syndrome.
Yes.
You hear about all kinds of issues like that, and it takes a while, and sometimes people they don't know how to care for it, and it becomes a long time in the making. It's horrible. It's horrible. They're like, everybody's chasing their tail, and they think they got a handle on it, and then they don't, because nobody knows what to do about it.
And stress is also a big part of this, but in our phase 1, we gear it towards the understanding that you already have somewhat of an overgrowth, and everything we recommend helps to diminish that overgrowth. And the skin is the largest organ in the body, so what happens is, as you are eating well and you're starving it out, which phase 1 starves it out, the skin is the largest organ of elimination. So you're going to start to see, on some people, the rashes come up, but it's not forever. It has to come out somewhere.
Yeah, it's just coming out. It's like a Herxheimer.
And you may get runny stools. It's called a Herxheimer reaction. And this is described in a book called The Yeast Syndrome by Trowbridge, which was like my Bible. And it was, I was really into the yeast because of...
You know why? Because just about everybody suffers from it, from at one point in their life.
Yes.
And many times they don't even know what it is. If they're not feeling good, they're tired, they get a little shiny rash somewhere, they don't know what it is.
Not to mention constipation. Serious constipation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I met a woman, I went on a, at Hippocrates where they had, they do, what's the grass?
Wheatgrass.
Wheatgrass.
Mm-hmm.
They had a wheatgrass therapy where you fasted and they food combined down there too. But I did this, right when before I graduated chiropractic school, and there was a woman there that was so thin. I mean, she was like this cord. She was so, and her skin was this color. It was
Great.
She was so bad, and she was so yeasty that you can have the reverse. You can be like the Pillsbury Doughboy, or you can have absolute failure to thrive and starving to death. And this woman, I talked to her and I says, you have to leave here. You cannot have that wheatgrass. That's not going to help you. And you can't starve. With yeast, you can't starve. You have to keep feeding and keeping your blood sugar.
But the problem is it wreaks havoc in where you absorb.
Yeah.
So you might even be digesting at a certain point, but once it goes into your upper jejunum or your small intestines, you're not going to be able to absorb all the nutrients that you just ate because it's gumming it up. It's like mucus everywhere.
The subject of this is why we're going to have Rob get on and join us, is that when it affects your brain, like it can, I've had it before. It's the most uncomfortable feeling, and it's nauseous, nauseating. You're nauseous. You want to throw up, and your brain is just like it's foggy. That's the only way we can describe it, is brain fog.
Before we ask Rob to come on, we get some questions from the Peanut Gallery. Thank you, Coach Jennifer. She's always manning the questions. So if you guys are in there and you have some questions, make sure you ask right there under the podcast, and Coach Jennifer is going to relay it to me. So Coach Jennifer just asked, does nail polish affect yeast symptoms on toenails? That's a very good question.
Well, the thing about nail polish, which I am paying a lot of attention to, is the nail polish, the typical conventional nail polish is very, 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 very toxic. There's toluene in there. There's horrible chemicals in there. And I go to, the health food stores, and I think if you're familiar with Sprouts or, the Whole Foods or Erewhon or
things like that,
you can get a or even online, you can buy them online, nail polishes that have no chemicals in it. And I believe that, yes, it would affect that, the fungus and yeast, fungus mostly in your nails.
And it will if you don't remove it regularly, because it's going to suffocate the health of the nail, and it creates a bad environment for it to go inside, not out.
Right. And it's
But you can internet search, and you can look for healthy nail polish that will not promote yeast on the fingers and toes.
Yeah.
I actually have a little story, real quick. That's why I don't like going to the gym, because I caught a fungus on my toe, and I was always a big gym freak, and now I have a gym at home. But it was so bad, and I couldn't get it handled, that when I went to the podiatrist, he had to remove the toenail. And I learned an awful lot from that experience. And he told me, if you're going to put nail polish on at all, find the one that does not suffocate the life of the nail and allow for that stuff to grow.
Yes, and there's fungicides you can use. And also, remember, number one is diet. I would say 95 to 98% diet. You got to clean up your diet and not feed the yeast. You cannot feed it.
Right.
If you get, sugar will thrive on the yeast, and you cannot go hungry. You have to eat every 2 hours and keep your blood sugar up.
It's all about your immune system. Yeah. And one of the most important things that we recommend in Flush Your Fat are the supplements. And it's one of our pillars for nutrifying, which is a real word. And one of them is glyconutrients, which is extremely important in building the immune system, because, like I said before, when your immune system is below 50%, and you might not know it, the yeast is going to wreak havoc.
And you can get, topical fungicide creams, and you can get like grapefruit seed extract, and coconut oil is caprylic acid is from coconut oil, and we use that a lot in the practice before we had any.
But it's all about diet. Really,
yeah, but you can do topical, I'm saying.
Yeah, you have to do topical.
You have to do topical to get it at both ends and concentrate on your diet. That's the most important thing.
Exactly. It's like cancer.
Yes.
Cancer grows on sugar.
Right.
In the PET scans, they shoot sugar into your veins to see the feeding frenzy of cancer. Well, same thing with yeast.
Oh, yeah.
Just a pinch of sugar in a gas tank does what?
It blows it out.
So,
and
but if you just have a little bit of starch that converts to sugar, if you have a little bit of sugar, or you say, oh, it's just a little, it's going to show a problem on your body somewhere if you're overridden with with yeast.
With my mother, if she ate some ice cream in her worst yeast time, she would freak out.
Yeah, she'd go into
immediately. I mean, it was like her insulin, whoop, and then boom, she freaked out. And I saw the correlation, and I figured this is serious brain fog.
All right, so let's we're excited to talk to Rob, because Rob has been a buddy of ours in Flesh Your Fat for Good for a long time, but also, and he started out as a vegan. And he's going to tell his story as to now he's not exactly a vegan, but we've known Mr. Rob Cohn for what?
We're not that old.
15, 20 years?
20 years.
Something like that.
Are you there, Rob?
So he's like a brother.
Robbie, are you there?
Yep, for a very long time.
For a very long time. Right. None of us are giving out that age.
We don't count years.
No.
Right, no.
It's lifetimes.
Yeah, we're lifetimes. So, you've been listening to this, and you haven't heard anything you don't know, because we've preached to you for years, and we've witnessed what was going on with you as well. And you called us not too long ago and told us wonderful, information about your yeast on your hands. So, give us a little background, Rob, and tell us.
Give us a little
where
history.
You're at right now.
Yeah.
Sure. So my story really starts from when I was a little child. I got sick a lot as a kid, and I was always on antibiotics all the time. And that continued through my teenage years, and pretty much off and on somewhat consistently for a long time. And then I also during those times fought with things like depression and anxiety. I always craved carbs. I was talking to Dr. Vicky about this. I didn't really care about my form of sugar came in tortilla chips, tortillas, like all of that stuff. I didn't care about the actual sugar. My sugar came from that. And and the more tired I was, the more I craved, and it was almost like I couldn't stop. And then I heard about Candida here and there, and I like in my gut, and I knew that I probably had that, but I didn't want to face the fact. That's just the honest truth. About 17 years ago, I started having sinus issues. And the doctor prescribed me, he put me on 30 days of a very strong antibiotic.
Yeah.
And then that led to a sinus surgery. And then over the course of about 12 years, that led to 4 sinus surgeries. And a ton of antibiotics, like a lot. And what I noticed during that time was I could lose weight for a little while, but it's like that carb craving kept coming back, and I couldn't figure, I really just thought I was a failure. And then I would have brain fog off and on, and about 2 years ago, I got a sinus infection, and about 2 days after being on the antibiotic, and sorry everybody, it's going to be a little graphic, but I started coughing up this thick, light stuff, and I was so sick, and my stomach was hard as a rock. It was so distended and so hard, and I just said, okay, well, that's it. I'm done. But I still wasn't willing to do the diet piece totally. But I was able to get myself off the antibiotics. That's a whole other story. But then I realized that I did have a problem with yeast. Now, at that time, I was, like Jackie said, I was vegan. And I did Flush Your Fat vegan. But still, I would still go off and then go on and then go off and then go on. And then I decided I didn't want to be vegan anymore after about 9 years. And slowly went back to eating animal protein. Felt much better. Well, what woke me up in this whole crazy story was about a year ago, on my left hand, I had this little red dot. I was like, what's this? And then I noticed over the course of a very short time, it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it started getting circular.
Oh, God.
And then I started doing my own research and, well, learning, okay, well, that's the result of candida.
Right.
Well, and then I noticed it started coming on the right hand. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, this is ridiculous. So I started cleaning up my diet, and that's when I called you guys and got back on the wagon. And in the beginning, it was a little rough, like you were saying. Sometimes it can get a little worse before it gets better, but I got through that. And then these spots kept getting bigger and bigger throughout this whole time, which I was kind of losing faith for a little bit, but I'm like, no, you got to hang in there. You got to hang in there.
So
and
now
I'll
it's
be
on
honest,
both.
I would fall off and fall on, get off and go on.
It's on both sides of your hands now? It's on both hands?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, and it was quick too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like a couple of years. It was like within weeks.
Oh my God.
That's scary.
And then finally, after about, I don't know, eight months or so, and not even of being super consistent, but I could have been better, I started getting some breakthroughs, and weight was coming off. I don't weigh myself, but I don't know, but my clothes were getting bigger. I was being more productive in the bathroom. Things were happening there that were making me very excited. Like, I was getting some diarrhea, and I did have a lot of mucus coming out, but that's what I knew needed to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, my most recent thing that was a big aha, which started this whole conversation, was, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I didn't make a good choice in eating. We went to a Thai restaurant, and I thought, oh, it's okay, it's gluten-free, whatever. You can kid yourself all you want.
Right.
Well, I noticed in about 2 days, why am I feeling so hazy? Why is my brain so foggy? Because every time that would happen in the past, I would think, uh-oh, I'm getting early onset Alzheimer's. My dad had Alzheimer's, now I'm getting Alzheimer's. And that's just
scary.
what's happening. But this time I'm like, hold on a second, you're not getting Alzheimer's. And I looked and I thought about it, what have you eaten recently?
Right.
And then I looked and I said, crap, it's that Thai food.
Right.
And then after about 2 or 3 days, I was fine back to normal, but I started really paying attention to, during the times of my life when I was eating like Flush Your Fat for Good, similar, and how good I felt, and when I wasn't, how all this other stuff like the brain fog, the depression, anxiety. So I'm just really convinced now that I look back that I think I've had this for a very long time. And I really, really do think that this was the root of a lot of my issues. And I still have a ways to go, and there's still stuff to clean out. But I mean, like when I go out and people say, oh, you're so good at what you eat. And it's really not a matter of being good. For me, it's just like, now it's like life or death.
Right. It's survival.
And you want to feel good.
This is what I was saying,
Yeah.
oh, you're such a good driver. You stop at the red lights. It's like,
Right.
what? Well,
It's true.
you know, and being a vegan, vegan is an excellent way to eat if your metabolism and your metabolic structure is conducive to that way of eating. So, we work with a lot of vegans, and in our book, we talk about how to eat Flush Your Fat for Good the vegan way.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Yep.
Which Rob was successful. He was one of our successful vegans.
he was a successful vegan, but things were not, well, you tell us, Rob. I mean, you successfully did the program, the lifestyle, vegan-wise, but that wasn't enough for you.
No, and I feel much better. I mean, vegan's not for everybody, and for me, my problem with being vegan, for me personally, is it's really just too starch heavy, and my body just doesn't do well with those starches.
Right.
Based upon this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I feel better and lighter eating the eggs and the lattes and the goat yogurt. I love my goat yogurt.
Me too.
I know. You can, if you look at an Eskimo and see the Eskimo has high fat, high protein, they have virtually no cardiovascular disease. But if you give that diet to the Hindu, you're going to kill the Hindu. If you give the Hindu diet, which is basic veganism, to the Eskimo, you're going to kill the Eskimo. It takes 17 generations to change a metabolic structure. So many people decide, well, veganism is good, eating animal flesh is bad, but they're not taking into consideration, for those that think it's a religious issue, we have to honor that.
Yes.
Even though we were told Jesus did eat meat. However, dogs have canines. Certain things take place in the mouth and the digestive system for certain metabolic structures. And again, if you're from the Asian culture, you're going to do a lot better with the veganism and the vegetarian, like the tofus, the beans, well,
even they eat a little bit of meat.
They do, yes. But when they introduced certain diets over into the Asian countries from the American, from our Western culture, they didn't do well either.
No.
You'll see some Japanese and Asians come over to America and eat the all-American diet, and they get fat and have acne, and they don't look healthy at all. They don't know why. They're eating the wrong diet for their metabolic structure. So with you are a tall, what are you, a German Jew? You're Ashkenazi? What are you?
German. Yeah, I'm 100% Ashkenazi Jew.
Yeah, and you're a tall guy.
I have some of that too in me.
Yeah.
I learned.
23andMe.
I'm German, half German, half Russian.
Okay, so show me the Hindu over there. But for you, but you did well, and it was a philosophy for you that you felt was right for you, thinking of health. I don't think you were doing that for a religious reason. But
correct.
But it was taught that, this is the best way to go for your health. But it's not. And that's why when you started switching over to eating some animal flesh, you started feeling stronger. Your body started reacting.
What about your
better.
brain? What
happened with your brain?
And depression and anxiety and all that.
Right. Yeah, because when I'm eating the way I'm supposed to and doing this how you have designed it, I don't have those cravings and I don't have those issues.
Right.
Right. And you don't
Cravings
have
go
the
away.
starch issue. Well, first of all, when you're on phase 1, within 72 hours, you don't even care about the starches.
No.
And unless you and you're an addict, if you're a sugar addict or a starch addict, which, I mean,
It's a little trickier.
well, it takes a little longer, but I
Yeah.
would say within a week to 10 days.
That's because it's up here.
And you are feeding
Habit.
yourself so much with the non-starchy carbohydrates, the vegetables, the low glycemic fruits, and good solid flesh proteins. You're not doing, you're not eating big, huge pieces of meat, but you are eating chicken, turkey, fish, beef. If you do pork, it's a 6-hour digestion period. But for all the proteins it's a 4-hour digestion period. So when you do our food combining as well, that is going to give you a lot more nutrients to give you the energy to be stronger and also not crave the sugars.
And you'll have balance. So are your little dots gone?
Yeah, my hands are completely, I would probably say 99% clear. There's just a couple little dots left, but I mean, you can't tell.
Yay.
And your clarity, I mean, I know you have a new job and you've moved out and left us all alone.
I
Yeah,
know.
no, it's all going great, and you know, and also too, I think along with the program, those glyconutrients also have made a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember, though, you were struggling with anxiety and depression. I mean, it was overwhelming for you. I remember that. And then when you switched to eating, you know, it's the Candida diet, really, the phase 1. When you went to the flesh and you did it, you know, started eating the meats again, that is really the Candida diet. We don't do vegan Candida diet because it's starch. You don't want to do that. But you started to, you know, your brain started to work a little better. You weren't getting that brain fog. So,
well, again, healthy body, healthy mind. And, you know, to maintain your blood sugar with the amount of protein you're eating, with your lattes, and you're putting the structured peptides in the lattes. You're building lean muscle mass, which is where you burn your fat. You want to burn your fat for fuel and energy. You don't want your sugars and starches to give you the energy. And that's a switch. You know, when people do this, when they first get started on this lifestyle, we give them about a week or two, and the next thing they say, oh my God, I'm on the couch, I can't get off, I'm so tired. And we're like, all right, that's awesome. And they're going, what are you talking about? And we go, that's a DOE, that's your day of exhaustion. Even though Coach Jennifer said she was exhausted her whole life.
And she had a day of energy instead of a day of exhaustion.
But the DOE is day of exhaustion, which is where your brain is switching over to burning your fat for fuel and energy. And that makes you feel good too.
Yeah, and you know, I just remember for years, Rob, I mean, ever since I knew you, you were struggling. You were just pushing yourself along.
Yeah.
You were just dragging your feet, and you just couldn't get a grip. The depression was so bad, and you just couldn't get a grip on it. You couldn't feel good. You put on a good act, but now it's a whole different story.
Yeah, you sound different and you look different the last time we saw you. And anyway,
you're right on. You're spot on.
Well, look,
energy is your energy. You're lighter. Your energy's lighter. Your body's lighter. I mean, not just inches and fat, but there's lightness to you. Where before it was so heavy. You know, because you couldn't get past it.
Listen, thank you for allowing us to pick your brain and talk to you. And we're hoping you guys come out so you can.
They're coming on the 1st.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yay! So we'll all go over.
And thank you, and thank you, ladies, for all the work you do to help all of us. It's very much appreciated.
Oh,
thank you.
You're welcome.
We love you,
love
Rob, and give our love to Randy. And we're going to talk to you real soon. But thank you so much for informing everybody on this call. Okay,
love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so we hope that you guys learned a lot about what we just talked about, because, you know, it's something you want to keep an eye on yourselves or on your loved ones, and you're going to be able to say, you know what, let's do Flush Your Fat for Good. Let's do, if you're on phase 2 and you're not feeling good, because a lot of people say, I don't have a lot of fat to lose, I'm just going to do phase 2. But you might, you know,
I recommend phase 1 for everyone, because when you look at the Inuit tribes that never know about phase 2, they don't do phase 2. They've for thousands of years always been on phase 1 in nutritional ketosis. You know, they're healthy, they're strong, they're not, you know, skin and bones. Everybody thinks that just because you're on phase 1, you're going to be skinny, and get thinner and thinner down to nothing. No, that's not true.
So go to the website, flushyourfatforgood.com. That's the number 4 good. get into the storefront. That's where we have our book. We have our CLA, GLA, and we also have our workbook. Now we also have a coaching course, which is if you want to become a coach, if you're in the health and wellness category of your industry, or if you just want to know how to care for yourself or your family or friends better and just improve your life. But also in the storefront, you're going to see our Starter Kit 1, Starter Kit 2, and now pretty soon I'm going to have to bring a new picture in because we have it, Starter Kit 3. Starter Kit 1 is where you get the books, the workbook, which is really great. We call this like a kitchen Bible. It's thin.
That was our first
It's
book
your blueprint.
5 years ago.
Right. I wrote this
5 years ago.
5 years ago almost. And but it's a blueprint, and you just go right through it, and it tells you what to do. And you join our Facebook page, and if you have any questions, for sure, everybody has that book. They also have this now because this is the science behind it, and you'll learn an awful lot. But in Starter Kit 1, we have the GLA, the CLA, we have the workbook, and we have all these cool charts and a shopping list.
Yes.
In Starter Kit 2, you don't get the GLA or CLA. So now we have Starter Kit 3, which is the workbook, the charts, the GLA, CLA, and our paperback book, which is really a great deal. That's $111.
Yeah, it's a great deal.
It really puts you into the commitment mode.
Gets you set up.
Gets you set up for a lifestyle for a lifetime. That's what it's about. The thing that I was going to tell you is when you go to Flush Your Fat for Good, the Facebook page, right?
Flush Your Fat for Good Buddies. If you have a Facebook page, type in the search box, Flush Your Fat, 4 Good Buddies. And it's a private room, very safe. We all help each other and support each other. And request to join, okay? And you'll have 3 or 4 questions you have to answer. Answer them, truthfully, and I will look at them and let you in. And you have to request, or I have to invite you, and you have to accept. It's not. We don't just throw you in the room because that's not okay. So you request to join. I'll see you that you requested. I'll see your answers, and then we tell you about the rules in the room and everything, because it's very safe, it's very comfortable, and we get a lot of good answers, and it's 24/7 support with more than 100 coaches in there.
We also have a call tomorrow for the Power 100 heroes. We call them our heroes because they're giving life a second chance. And this is something that Coach Jennifer really encouraged us to put together, and she's the coach or the host of the host of the Mostest, or whatever they call it.
And we co-host with her.
And that's tomorrow, Wednesday. And once you become, you come into the Facebook page, as well as if you're on our website and you become a VIP member, you will get an email from us. But it's at 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, and everybody's welcome, but it's for people that have 100+ pounds to lose. We have many people that are 300, 400, 500 pounds, and we are there for them 100%, because there's many different things that people that have over 100 pounds to lose, different issues. So we want to thank you all for joining us. And
thank you, Rob.
Yes, thanks to Rob. And until next week, God bless.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Flush Your Fat for Good with Jackie and Dr. Vicky, only on LA Talk Radio.